I'm looking down at Washington, D.C. Right now, the Capitol, the White House, the Washington Monument, all of it, and my only thought, the single thing taking up space in my brain, is how do I call my office and say I'm not coming in? Because I don't have hands. I have wings. To massive brown wings where my arms used to be, and I have absolutely no idea why. My name is Jack Harris, 34 years old, CIA intelligence analyst, level 3 clearance, 12 years on the job, and I am an eagle, not a metaphor, not a code name. A literal bald eagle with a white head, yellow talons, and full feathers, with complete memory of everything I was just 24 hours ago. Every detail, every face, every classified file I ever read. Last night at 11:47, I was sitting at my desk on the 3rd floor, watching for monitors and eating cold pizza. I was tracking an ongoing operation. Pepperoni pizza, 3rd cup of coffee of the night, standard Friday at the end of the month. Then I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for 1 second. Just 1 second. I was not planning to fall asleep, and then I opened them, and instead of my office ceiling, I saw sky. Open, massive, endless blue sky above Washington, D.C. I realized I was lying on something cold and hard. It was the roof of my building, the exact same roof where I smoked on lunch breaks. Except now I was looking at the concrete from below, lying on my side, and where my arms should have been. Wings. The first 5 minutes I just laid there and stared up at the sky. My brain refused to process the incoming information, which is strange, because I work for the CIA. My brain is literally trained to process any incoming information under any conditions. But not this. There is no course for this at our training facility. I would know. I checked every module personally. Then I tried to stand. Up and I did. But wrong. Not on legs. On feet. On gray scaly bird feet with curved yellow talons. I looked right. A wing. Big. Brown. Perfectly folded. Almost a full meter from shoulder to tip. I looked left. Another one. I tried to say something out loud. Something coherent. Something like, what in the actual hell is happening to me right now? What came out was, cree, loud, piercing, echoing across the entire roof and probably half the city block around it. That was my first cry as an eagle. Very dignified for a senior analyst at the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States. Okay, stop. Pull it together. Jack, you are an analyst. You work with data. Here is the data. You are an eagle. Fact accepted. Panic will not help. Hysteria will not help. Think methodically. What are your available options right now, in this exact moment? Next, I tried to spread the wings, just to understand if I had any control over them. They opened on their own, wide, powerful, almost 2 meters of full wingspan, and immediately a gust of wind came from behind the building and caught them both. It picked me up without warning. I flew off the roof before I had made a single conscious decision about any of this. The first 10 seconds of freefall were objectively the worst of my 34 years on this planet. I dropped straight down, from the height of the 12th floor, directly toward a busy nighttime street in the middle of downtown Washington, D.C., with one clear thought in my head. Well, that's it, Jack. Good career. Decent pizza for a last meal. Sorry, Mom. But the body knew what to do even when my brain absolutely did not. The instincts fired before my conscious mind caught up. The wings snapped open at the last possible second. Caught the air. I leveled out literally 1 meter above the asphalt. Someone screamed below me. A tourist in a yellow jacket dropped his coffee cup and stood there staring straight up at me. I completely understand him. I would have dropped my coffee too if a bald eagle almost landed on me at midnight. Totally fair. For the next few minutes I just flew. No direction. The body handled everything. Smooth, effortless, almost automatic. It found warm air currents on its own and rode them upward, without a single unnecessary beat of the wings. Pure instinct. And my head ran on pure panic. Because I remembered everything. Absolutely every detail of the life I had yesterday. I remembered my apartment in Arlington. Blue couch. Broken coffee maker. A stack of books I kept meaning to read. I remember my mom in Ohio who I promised to call this Friday. I promised her the same thing 3 Fridays in a row. I remember the passwords to every system I used at work. I remembered 3 open cases sitting on my desk right now. I remember that today was Friday. That our department does Pizza Friday. A 3-year tradition. And I was missing it. Missing it because I was an eagle. That was the single most absurd thought I had ever had in my entire life. And I've had many. I climbed higher, 300 meters above the city, and Washington opened up below me like a live, breathing map. Every street, every building, every person on the sidewalk visible like I was looking through a professional telephoto lens. Eagle vision is not a joke. That was the first thing about this body that actually impressed me. The first of very few things. And right there is when my analyst brain finally switched back on at full power. Because I started seeing things I shouldn't. From 300 meters I could see things that no regular bird would ever notice or care about. But I was not a regular bird. There was a foreign embassy I had worked 2 years ago. I knew every inch of the outside. And right now someone was on the roof. Someone who had no business being up there. Standing completely still. Watching the direction of the White House. Professional posture. There were 2 men at the north entrance of a shopping center near the Capitol. Standing wrong, too straight, too alert. I know that look. I can spot the posture from 1,000 meters away on a satellite image. These were not regular people. My dark blue Honda Civic was still sitting in the parking lot next to my building, exactly where I had left it at 8 p.m. And I was up here, above all of it, with wings instead of arms, at 1 in the morning, with zero understanding of what happened. I made a wide, slow circle over the city. Watch. Thought. Started running the data through the standard analysis matrix. Okay, let's say I'm an eagle now. That's the working hypothesis. What do I know for certain right now in this moment? 1. I have full memory and full consciousness. That means I am still me, just in a radically different kind of body. 2. The body functions. I can fly. I can see. The vision alone is something I genuinely was not prepared for at all. 3. Nobody knows yet. To every system and every colleague, I am currently somewhere inside the building, still present. 4. And this is the most important point of everything. Somebody did this. On purpose. This is not a natural anomaly. People do not become eagles by accident. Not by mistake. Not because they ate something questionable for dinner on Thursday. I have worked in intelligence for 12 years. I know exactly what a planned operation looks like. And this is a planned operation. The only question is whose. Who ran this? Why specifically me? Why right now? On the specific night? At this specific time? I landed on top of the Washington Monument. The guard below looked up at me and immediately pulled out his phone for a photo. He showed his partner. They both smiled. Probably thought it was symbolic. Eagle on the monument at dawn. Great Instagram content. Patriotic shot. Guaranteed likes. If only they knew who was actually sitting up there looking down at the two of them. I sat there and thought systematically, step by step, exactly the way we're trained to approach problems at the agency. Who knew I worked at the CIA and which specific project I had been running for the past 3 weeks? Not a long list. Who knew my exact daily schedule and my habit of staying in the office past midnight on Fridays at the end of the month? Who had an actual motive to remove me from the board right now, at this exact stage of this exact investigation? 3 weeks ago, I finished an analytical report on a very specific and very inconvenient subject that affected certain people. The same report that our director, personally, with no explanation given, asked me to put in a drawer and never touch again. I said, yes sir, I'll put it away. I'll stay quiet. Of course, this is how the system works. I've seen it before. I put it away, officially, in the drawer, under lock, everything by the rules, everything exactly as leadership wanted. But I made a copy, just in case. Professional reflex after 12 years in the analytical division of a major intelligence agency. Maybe the just-in-case moment is right now. Maybe it's happening in the form of a bird body over Washington, D.C. At 1 a.m., the sun was starting to come up. Washington was waking up slowly. First cars, pigeons, early tourists with paper maps. A regular Friday morning for every other person in this city, except for one specific eagle circling above the Capitol dome. I flew again, much more confident this time. The body was learning fast how to read and use the air currents below me. I flew toward my office building, not because I could do anything useful there with wings instead of hands and fingers, but because I needed to see. Seeing was now the one thing I could do better than I ever could as a human being. CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, 20 minutes by car from downtown Washington. For an eagle, for minutes, I hovered above the complex at a height that shouldn't trigger any of the ground-level perimeter surveillance systems. I knew exactly where every camera was positioned. I knew their fields of view. I knew the dead zones between them. I knew the guard rotation schedule at every entrance. I knew the patrol routes across the interior grounds down to the meter. 12 years in that building every single workday. That's not just work experience. That is a detailed map inside my head. Parking lot, my dark blue Civic, and its usual spot in the 3rd row. Right where I left it. No alert triggered yet. Officially, I was still inside the building. Still present in the system. No missing persons flag. Not yet. Good. How much time did I actually have? Until end of business today for certain. Then the search protocol would start automatically. I landed on a tall tree near the outer perimeter fence. The guard at the gate looked over and immediately looked away. Bird on a tree at 7 in the morning. Completely normal image. Nothing suspicious. Everything is absolutely fine out here. I looked at the third floor windows. Corner window on the right side. My office. For monitors. Cold pizza on the desk. And then I saw something inside the corner office. Something that was both very interesting and deeply unpleasant at once. Someone was in my office. Not a janitor. Not a colleague whose face I recognized. A stranger in a dark tailored suit. He was going through my desk drawers in a specific order. Fast. Professional. He clearly knew exactly what he was looking for. So they already started. They didn't even wait for an official notice of my absence. They were already inside my office. Someone in my office at 7 in the morning on a Friday means he was sent there in advance. Before I disappeared, which means they knew this was going to happen. They planned it. They had the next step ready before the first step finished. I launched straight up, fast and almost vertical. Anger, it turns out, is excellent fuel for an eagle in full flight. New data. Someone is searching my office right now, during business hours openly, without any attempt to hide the timing. This means one thing. These people knew I would disappear last night. They knew exactly when. They prepared the follow-up step. They are looking for the copy. My personal copy of the analytical report that I was told to close 3 weeks ago permanently, which is not in the desk, not in the office safe, not in any location they are going to systematically check today. Because I am a CIA analyst, and even while living inside an eagle's body, I have not stopped being a CIA analyst. I flew back toward the city center, thinking in motion or in flight, which is the same thing for me now. Fast and methodical. The copy is somewhere safe. That is the one good thing about this entire situation. Everything else is a problem to solve. I have no hands, no phone, no voice that humans understand as human speech, no access to any system I know how to use. All I have is wings, a functioning brain, and vision that covers the entire city from above with perfect clarity. An analyst knows how to connect scatter points into one picture that a regular person wouldn't even notice separately. Maybe from actual literal bird's eye view I can see more than I ever saw staring at a screen. In a climate-controlled office. I didn't know then how accurate that thought was going to turn out to be, and how fast it would be confirmed in practice. I didn't know that right now, while I was figuring out the wings and processing the fact of my own transformation. The exact thing I had described in my classified report 3 weeks ago was actively unfolding right below my wings. In real time. Right now, the thing I was told to forget was happening in the streets of Washington as I watched from above. I was flying over Rock Creek Park, the big green space in the middle of Washington between the residential neighborhoods. Beautiful from above, honestly. I had only ever seen it on maps and in satellite imagery. This angle was something different. And there in the far corner of the park, far from the walking paths and far from any surveillance camera I could see, I spotted a meeting. To people, a bench near a small pond. Nobody within 200 meters in any direction. One of them I recognized immediately. I had seen his photograph in case files multiple times. I remembered the face clearly. A foreign diplomat, officially listed as a cultural cooperation advisor at his country's embassy. Solid cover. Good legend. Unofficially. I knew exactly what he was. That was precisely why his photograph was inside my closed classified file. The same file that our director had personally asked me 3 weeks ago to put in a drawer and never open again. I descended slowly and carefully, landed on the branch of an old oak tree directly above the bench where they were sitting. An eagle on a tree in a park at dawn. Neither of them looked up. Not once. This was genuinely useful to know about this body. I couldn't hear the words. Eagle hearing is sharper than human, but not enough to catch whispered conversation at distance. But I could see every movement in perfect detail. And I watched the second man hand over an envelope. Thick. Yellow. The diplomat took it without looking down, moved it into his inner jacket pocket in one smooth, completely practiced motion. The motion of a person who has done this exact exchange many times before. Not the second, not the 10th, more than that. And the second man, I knew him too, personally, because he worked in my building, at CIA headquarters in Langley. Not in my department. Above me, significantly above. The level I only saw at quarterly all-hands briefings. Very high up. There it was. Jack. There was the answer. There was the motive. There was the chain I had started carefully pulling 3 weeks ago. I sat on the branch and everything assembled itself in my head the way it always does when the last piece finally appears. The file I was told to close. The man from my building searching my desk at 7 a.m. on a Friday morning in my office. The meeting in the park at sunrise with an envelope changing hands. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals a very specific answer. I knew who had done this to me. I knew exactly why, and I understood that this situation was much larger than I had thought. I had gotten too close to something real, and instead of removing me the simple way, someone had found a cleaner method. No body, no investigation, no missing persons case. The CIA analyst didn't disappear. The analyst just became a bird. No body means no investigation. No person means no testimony. No jack means no problem. Elegant. I have to give them that. But they had one significant problem that they clearly did not account for. When they were planning this beautiful operation, I was still here. I was still thinking, and I had just personally watched a meeting they absolutely did not want anyone to see. The diplomat stood up from the bench, adjusted his jacket, walked toward the park exit, calm, confident, man with a full plan. I lifted off the branch quietly. He didn't hear a thing, and I followed him. 30 meters of altitude, invisible is silent. I know how to run surveillance. 12 years of experience working with field agents and intelligence operations globally. The difference is that before I did it through satellites, drones, and analytical systems in a warm office with decent coffee. Now I was doing it personally. No equipment, no protocol. Personally, and from 30 meters above the rooftops of Washington. The diplomat caught a cab. The cab headed north for 20 minutes through the city, then stopped at a small hotel. Riverside Inn, 4th Street, Northwest. I landed on the cornice above the main entrance and started counting the minutes. 7 minutes later, he walked back out. Same jacket, but the inner pocket was completely flat now. The envelope was gone. That meant the envelope was somewhere in the hotel, in a specific room. When he had entered, a 3rd floor window was open. I had read the room number clearly on the door as he walked through it. 307. Eagle Vision earns its reputation. So, I had real, live, important intelligence. Addresses. Names. A specific room in a specific hotel on a specific street. And I had absolutely no practical way to act on any of that intelligence right now, because I was an eagle. With no hands. No voice. No phone. No access to any system I knew. No way to call anyone in the world who could do something with this. I landed on a wooden bench near the hotel entrance. An elderly woman was already sitting there, quietly feeding the pigeons. She looked at me. I looked at her. A few seconds of silence passed between us. She reached into a paper bag for bread. She held a small piece out on her open palm and said quietly, with what sounded like genuine warmth, "Beautiful bird. If you only knew, ma'am, if you only knew who was actually sitting next to you on this bench right now at 7:30 a.m. I took the bread, not because I was hungry, simply because I had no idea what else to do at this particular moment. Day 1 in the body of an eagle was ending roughly as absurdly and uselessly as it had started. Roughly the same energy. But I had a plan. Still rough. Still risky. Not particularly elegant. But a direction. A concrete next move to make. I needed one person. One specific person out of everyone at the CIA. The only one I could trust enough to approach like this. My colleague, Sarah Connor. Not that one. A different Sarah Connor. Similar personality though, honestly. Very similar. Sarah had worked in my department for 7 years. We had closed 12 cases together across varying levels of difficulty. She was the only person who read my full report on the file before the director asked me to close it permanently forever. And she was the only one who asked me directly afterward, "Jack, are you sure you actually want to just put this away?" I said yes, Sarah. Completely sure. I'll put it in the drawer. I'll forget about it. The director knows best. System works. I lied. First time in 7 years of working together. And she felt it. I could see it in her face when I said it. I needed to reach Sarah. Give her enough information to understand what had happened. Without words. Without a phone call. Without a note. An eagle that knows his colleague's name cannot just walk into a secure building and explain the situation at reception. Or can it find another way? There has to be a way. I am a CIA analyst. Finding ways through impossible situations is my job. I remembered our personal code. Every analyst pair at the agency develops one, designed specifically for emergency contact. A set of visual symbols. Simple.low-tech. For situations when all normal communication channels are unavailable for any reason. One talon, on a soft surface. For specific symbols. Large.clear. In the right place at the right moment of the right day. She would understand, as she saw it, if I picked the right place and the right time. If I was fast enough before things shifted. One obstacle remained. Sarah worked inside a secured CIA building in Langley, where eagles are not admitted through the entrance. But she left every single day at exactly 12:30 p.m. for lunch. Alone. On foot, without a single exception in 7 years. A small sandwich shop 3 blocks from the building. Same place, same time, every day. 7 years of perfect consistency. That was my window. My only real practical opportunity for the next several hours. Tomorrow. 12:30. The sandwich shop. The sun was tilting toward the west now. Sunset over Washington from 300 meters looked like nothing I had ever seen. Orange sky over the Capitol dome. The Potomac shining below like a dark mirror. The city lights coming on one by one across it. I would have taken a photo, but I had no hands. That was genuinely the saddest thought I had all day. A really sad thought. I needed somewhere to sleep. For an eagle, this is simpler than for a human with no ID, no phone, and no credit cards. Rock Creek Park, the oak tree by the water. The same one from this morning. Familiar. Quiet. Far enough from the foot traffic. I landed on the branch. The body found the correct position on its own. Settled. Locked the talons into the bark. Secure. The body knew how to sleep in a tree in a city park at night. I did not, but the body did. I decided to trust the body. Last thing I thought before I fell into sleep, clear, short, point by point, the way I always close out a report. No hands. No phone. No voice. No access. No allies that I know of. No way to communicate with anyone in the morning. But there is information that actually matters. There is a plan for tomorrow. There is 12:30 and a sandwich shop. The eagle fell asleep on a branch in a Washington park on a Friday evening. Quiet. I noticed, like any other city bird, and the CIA analyst inside that eagle was already building tomorrow's plan in his sleep detailed. Step by step, with backups. If you woke up one morning in the body of an eagle over your city, what would be your very first move? Drop it below. I woke up before sunrise. The branch was still. The park was quiet. And for exactly 3 seconds I forgot what I was. 3 seconds of normal. 3 seconds of thinking I was about to reach for my phone and check the morning briefings. Then I moved my arm and felt the wing, and the 3 seconds ended. Back to reality. Back to being a federal eagle. Okay. Saturday morning. 12:30 was still 6 hours away. I had time, which meant I had time to make mistakes. I was not going to make mistakes. I was going to use the 6 hours the way any good analyst uses unexpected downtime. I was going to gather information from above, systematically, the way I always work, slow, methodical, no assumptions. I lifted off the branch and climbed to cruising altitude. 300 meters, clear morning air, the city still half asleep. First stop, the hotel, Riverside Inn, room 307. I wanted to know if the envelope was still there or already in motion. The window on the 3rd floor was closed now. I circled the building twice. No visible activity. Nothing I could read yet. Second stop, the park bench where the meeting had happened. I dropped low and swept the area carefully from 20 meters. Nothing. Clean. They were professionals. Of course they were professionals. I had not expected them to leave anything behind. Third stop, the embassy. The one where I had spotted the man on the roof the night before. I climbed high and approached slow. Different man on the roof now. Different posture. Regular security. The one from last night was already somewhere else entirely. I logged all of it. Not literally. No notepad. No keyboard. No voice recorder. Just memory. I had always had good memory. 12 years of memorizing classified briefings before they were shredded had made my memory genuinely exceptional under pressure. By 8 in the morning I had done a full sweep of 6 locations that connected to my closed file. In some way or another, everything looked normal on the surface, which meant either nothing was happening yet, or everything was already done. I had seen enough operations to know which one was more likely. It was not the first option. It was almost never the first option. I needed to eat something. That thought arrived suddenly and with a lot of force. Eagle bodies apparently have strong opinions about food. I had been so focused on the intelligence problem that I had completely ignored the biological situation I was now living inside. I found a quiet stretch of Rock Creek and watched the water for about 4 minutes. Then the body took over completely. I don't need to describe what happened next in detail. Let's just say the instincts worked, and the fish did not escape. I sat on a rock by the water and processed what I had just done. I had caught and eaten a raw fish before 9 a.m. Alone. 2 days ago, I was complaining that the agency cafeteria stopped serving the good breakfast sandwiches. The contrast was real, but the body felt satisfied, not strong, not focused. Whatever biology was running this machine, it knew what it was doing out here. I cleaned my beak on the rock, looked at my own reflection in the water for a long moment. White head, yellow eyes, for kilos. This was me now, at least temporarily, at least until I figured out what happened and who specifically had made it happen. And I was going to figure that out, because I was Jack Harris. And in 12 years at the agency, I had never closed a case wrong. I flew back up to altitude, checked the sun position, calculated the time roughly. About 9:15, 3 hours 15 left. I spent the next hours doing something that would have been completely impossible from behind a desk and for monitors. I watched people, specifically people who connected in any way to the locations and names inside my closed analytical report. From above, from angles that no surveillance camera in the city was positioned to cover, from altitude that nobody ever checked, the man from my building who I had seen in the park, the one who had handed over the yellow envelope at the bench. His name was Deputy Director Carl Weston, Section Chief, Budget and Oversight, 14 years at the agency, model career record. I had seen his face at 3 all-hands meetings per year for 4 years. He had a daughter in the 8th grade in McLean. He coached youth soccer on weekends. He had a perfect personnel file. He was exactly the kind of person nobody ever suspected, which is, of course, exactly why you pick the kind of person when you are running something that cannot ever be discovered. I spotted him leaving his house in McLean at 9:40, dressed casually, weekend clothes, coffee in hand, perfectly normal Saturday. He drove to a dry cleaner 3 blocks from his house, went inside, came out for minutes later with nothing in his hands. That's too fast for dry cleaning. Nobody does anything at a dry cleaner and for minutes. That was a dead drop. Textbook move. I circled the dry cleaner building twice, committed the address to memory, noted the time, added it to the picture in my head. The picture was getting clearer, and it was getting worse. This was not to people doing something careless and isolated. This was infrastructure. This was a network that had been running for some time, with established locations and established habits. The kind of network that takes years to build, and the kind that causes very serious damage before anyone notices it exists. This was exactly what my report had described 3 weeks ago. Every data point I had flagged was showing up in real life now. I thought about the director, about the way he had looked at me when he asked me to close the file. Calm, almost too calm. No explanation, no pushback on the findings, no counter-analysis requested. Just put it away, Jack. Trust the process here. At the time, I thought it was politics. Budget season. Someone senior getting protective about a program that looked bad on paper. I no longer thought that. I was now thinking something much simpler and much more uncomfortable about what the meeting meant. At 11:50, I broke away from the surveillance pattern and flew toward Langley. I needed to be in position before 12:30. The sandwich shop was called Miller's. Small place. 8 tables inside. 2 outside on the sidewalk when the weather was good. Weather was good today. I knew there would be outside tables, which meant I had a realistic approach angle for what I needed to do. I landed on a power line directly across the street from Miller's at 12:22. 8 minutes to wait. I waited. 12:29. The glass door of the CIA building 3 blocks up opened. A woman in a gray jacket walked out alone. Sarah Connor. Medium height, dark hair pulled back, moving at the same pace she always moved, fast, like she had somewhere to be. She always moved like that, even when she was just walking to lunch. Sarah treated everything like it was slightly urgent. I watched her cross the intersections without slowing down, push open the door of Miller's, go straight to the counter to order. 2 minutes later, she came back out with a paper bag and a drink and sat at the small table on the sidewalk, second from the left. Same table she always took when the weather was good enough to sit outside. 7 years of the same table, same order probably. I had 30 minutes. 30 minutes before she finished lunch and walked back to the building, and I lost the window completely. I flew across the street and landed on the back of the empty chair, directly across the table from where Sarah was sitting. She looked up, blinked, looked at the eagle sitting in the chair across from her like a very strange lunch companion. She did not scream. She did not knock over her drink. She looked at me with the exact expression I had seen her use on confusing data. The expression that meant, this is unusual. I am going to sit with this for a moment before I react to it. Very Sarah. Okay, she said quietly, looking directly at me. You are a very confident bird. I'll give you that much right now. I looked back at her. I needed something to write on. The paper bag from her lunch, the napkin under her cup, something. She had a pen. She always had a pen. Sarah carried a pen the way some people carry a Lucky Charm, always, without thinking. I looked at the napkin, then at her pen, then at the napkin again. I did it slowly, deliberately, like I was making a point. She noticed. I could see her notice. She tilted her head at a very slight angle, the same angle she used when data got strange. You want the pen, she said. Not a question, a slow statement, the kind she made when she was testing a hypothesis out loud. I held her gaze steady. Then I looked at the napkin one more time, very clearly, very deliberately. and I waited for her to move. She picked up the pen, hesitated for exactly 2 seconds, then placed it on the table in front of me and pulled her hand back. I leaned forward, gripped the pen in my talon as carefully as I could manage. The grip was awkward. The body was not built for this. But I had spent 3 weeks working on a report about patience and precision under difficult operating conditions. I could manage a pen. I pressed the tip to the napkin dot slowly, carefully, one symbol at a time. For symbols total, our emergency contact sequence. The handwriting looked like a crime had been committed against the alphabet, but the symbols were correct, all 4 of them. I pushed the napkin toward her with one talon and stepped back. Gave her room. Watched her face as she looked down at it. She picked up the napkin dot, read it. Read it again. Her face went through 3 different expressions in about 4 seconds. The third expression was the one I needed to see. The one that meant she recognized exactly what she was looking at right now. She looked up at me very slowly, and this time, the expression was completely different from anything I had seen from her before. "Jack," she said. One word. Almost no volume. The kind of voice people use when they are not sure reality is behaving correctly. I held eye contact. Did not move. Let her sit with it. That was always the right move with Sarah. Give her the space to land. She looked back down at the napkin, then up at me. Then she did something I had not seen Sarah Connor do in 7 years. She laughed, short, involuntary, the kind that escapes before the professional composure can catch it and pull it back inside. Then she covered her mouth with her hand and looked around the street very carefully. Nobody was paying attention to us. "Okay," she said quietly, dropping her hand. "Okay. I have about 28 minutes left on my lunch break. Talk to me." I could not talk. That was the central problem. I had information, and she had time, and between us there was a 4-kilo bird. I looked at her bag. She understood immediately, pulled out another napkin from the bag and set it flat on the table for me. I worked through from napkins over the next 20 minutes. My talent writing was getting marginally better with every attempt. I wrote, "Weston." She went still when she read it, the kind of still that means the name landed exactly where it was supposed to. I wrote, "Part, Saturday morning. Envelope. Diplomat." She read each word as I finished it. Her face stayed completely controlled. I wrote, "Room 307, Riverside Inn, 4th St. N.W." She photographed the napkin with her phone before I had even finished the 7. I wrote, "My report was right." She stared at that one for a long moment without photographing it. Then she folded it very small. She put the folded napkin in her jacket pocket, looked at me. Her eyes were doing the thing they did during hard briefings. Processing fast, running implications, building the second and third order consequences before the first one was even confirmed. "How long have you been like this?" she said quietly. The analyst in her had already accepted the premise. She was past the shock. I held up one talon. She nodded. "Since Friday night." I nodded. She wrote something in her own small notebook, tore it out. She slid the paper across the table. On it she had written a phone number and a single word below it. The word was burner. "Tonight," she said, 9 p.m. "I'll have it by then. I'll figure out a speaker setup. We'll find a way to make this work." She gathered her lunch bag, stood up, straightened her jacket, looked at me one more time with that same controlled expression. "Jack," she said, "for what it's worth, your parking spot is going to be gone by Monday if we don't move fast on this." Then she turned and walked back toward the building at the same pace she always walked, like everything was completely normal. I watched her go and felt something I had not felt since Friday night at 11:47 sitting at my desk with cold pizza. Something that felt like the problem had an actual solution, like the situation had a next step that was real and reachable. I took off from the table, climbed fast, turned south toward the city, and let the wind carry me up to a comfortable altitude. I had a meeting at 9 p.m. I had an ally. I had information that was already in motion towards someone who could actually use it. For an eagle with no hands, no phone, no ID, and no physical presence in the human world, that was a genuinely strong position. I spent the rest of the afternoon running the surveillance loop I had started in the morning, back over the same 6 locations. The dry cleaner on Weston Street, the hotel on 4th, the embassy roof, the park bench, the building, the parking lot. On my third pass over the hotel, I noticed the window in room 307 was open again. Different angle than this morning. Wider. Someone was in that room. Not the diplomat. Different silhouette. Larger. Moving with a kind of deliberate, unhurried patience. I dropped to 50 meters and positioned myself behind a large commercial AC unit on the neighboring roof. Angle was good. The person in room 307 was a man I had never seen before. Big. Gray hair. Standing at the window looking out at the street. He was not looking at anything specific. He was looking the way people look when they are waiting for a specific moment to arrive. I memorized the face. Every detail I could get from this distance with this light at this angle. I was good at memorizing faces. Then he stepped back from the window and the room went still. He did not leave. He was waiting. Whatever came next, he was ready. I filed him under a known variable and continued the loop. An unknown variable at the center of an active operation was serious. But I had learned a long time ago that chasing every thread at once was how analysts burned out and missed the important ones. Stay on the main line. Let the side threads develop. Come back to them when the picture is clearer. That was the discipline. I was back at Rock Creek Park by 6 p.m. 8 again. The body was efficient about that. It told me clearly what it needed. I thought about Sarah while I sat on my rock by the water. About what she was going to have to do with the information I gave her. She was going to have to move carefully. Inside a building where at least one person at the deputy director level was compromised. Possibly more than one. That was the part of the picture I had not been able to finish drawing yet. The scope was still unclear. What I knew was that my report had identified the early structure of something large. And large structures have more than one node. Sarah would know to be careful. She was the best analyst I had ever worked alongside. She did not take unnecessary operational risks. But she was also walking back into the building with information that certain people in the building would very much want to find. I sat with that thought for a while. The water moved. A duck drifted past without looking at me. The park went quiet around me. At 8:45, I was positioned on a ledge outside a hardware store 2 blocks from Sarah's apartment in Northwest D.C. She had given me the number. I could not dial, but a burner phone on speaker meant she would do the talking and the listening. At 9:02, a window on the 4th floor of her building opened. She leaned out, looked up and down the street. Saw me. 2 minutes later, she came out the front door with a small phone in her hand and walked to the building's rear parking area. She set the phone on the roof of her car, screen out, speaker on. I landed on the side mirror. The mic picked up just fine. Okay, she said. I'm going to tell you what I found in 6 hours and you are going to knock on the car roof once for yes. I knocked once. She nodded, pulled out a small notebook, opened it to the first page, and looked at me across the car roof. Weston has been accessing files outside his clearance level for at least 14 months. I found 3 flagged access events. They were flagged. Then the flags were removed by a manual override 2 days after each one, by someone with admin clearance. The admin override account traces to a user ID that was officially deactivated 8 months ago, but it's still active in the system. I knocked twice, hard. She looked at me. You knew about the ghost account. I knocked once. She wrote something in the notebook. There's more, she said. The diplomat you described. I cross-referenced the physical description with the cultural attaché list. His name is Andrei Kolov. He was flagged by counterintelligence in 2019. The flag was closed out 9 months later. Insufficient evidence. The analyst who closed the flag was reassigned to a field posting in Helsinki 6 weeks after closing it. He's still there now. I felt something move in my chest. Not metaphorically. The body actually responded to the information. A physical tightening. The Helsinki posting. That name connected to something. Something I had read in a background file 3 weeks ago while building my report. I knocked twice, then tapped the mirror 3 times in a specific pattern. She looked at me, tilted her head, waited. I tapped again. She stared. Then her eyes changed. You're saying there's a name. Someone connected to Helsinki. One knock. She flipped forward in her notebook. Found a page. Ran her finger down it. Stopped. Marcus Webb, she said quietly. Is it Webb? One knock. Hard. She stared at the roof of the car for a long moment before she looked back up at the phone and at me. Jack, if Webb is connected to this is not a rogue operation by one deputy director making bad decisions for bad reasons. This is something that has been running at a level that I don't. She stopped, looked at the phone, then looked up at me. This is something that has been running at a level that means we cannot trust the internal reporting structure at all. Zero, I knew. I had known since I watched Weston hand an envelope to Kolov in the park at sunrise while the city was still asleep. I had built the report 3 weeks ago and I had felt it then. The weight of it, the shape of it, the size of what it meant. And then the director had looked at me with that too calm expression and asked me to put it in a drawer. And I had understood, not consciously, but somewhere under the analysis and the professionalism and the 12 years of trusting the institutional process, I had understood what I was sitting across from in that office. And I had made a copy because some part of me already knew. So, Sarah said. She closed the notebook, looked directly at me on the side mirror and the yellow light of the parking lot. We are not going this through normal channels. We are going around the building entirely. which means we need outside contact. She said it like a conclusion, which it was. She was already there. She had gotten there faster than I had. That was very Sarah. I know someone at DOJ, she said. Someone I went to law school with before I switched to intelligence. She's been there 12 years. She's not connected to any of the programs in your report. I checked before I came down here. Clean as it gets. I trust her. I'm going to reach out tomorrow, carefully, through a channel that does not go near the building or anyone inside it at all. She picked up the notebook again, wrote something on the last page, tore it out and held it up toward me in the yellow light. On the paper, she had written exactly 3 words in her sharp handwriting: copy location, tonight. I read it once and understood. I looked at the paper, then at her, then I knocked once on the car roof. Then I lifted off the side mirror and flew north. She followed in the car. I knew where the copy was. She needed to know where the copy was. Tonight was the right time for that. I had kept the copy in a place that had nothing to do with my apartment, my car, my office, or any location tied to my name. A storage unit in College Park, Maryland, registered under my uncle's name. He had died 4 years ago. The unit was forgotten. Inside it, a sealed envelope taped to the bottom of an empty toolbox on the bottom shelf. In the back right corner, inside the envelope, a full printed copy of the report. Every page, every footnote, every data source I had used to build it. I led Sarah's car up Route 1 toward College Park. She followed at a reasonable distance. No headlights flashed, no questions. We had worked together long enough that she understood the operational logic without needing it explained in real time like this. I dropped onto the roof of the storage facility office when we arrived. She got out of the car, looked up at me, waited. I flew to Unit 44, landed on the door handle. She walked over, looked at the combination padlock, looked up at me. Combination. I tapped the door in sequence. Slow. Clear. She watched every tap and wrote the numbers down in her notebook as I went. She opened the lock, pulled the door, went inside. I heard her moving things, then the sound of tape being carefully removed. 2 minutes later, she walked back out with the envelope in her hand. She held it up without opening it, looked at me directly. I've got it, she said. I'm going to make copies tonight and get the original into a secure location before morning comes. She looked at the envelope for another moment, then at me, and for the first time since the sandwich shop she looked less controlled. Jack, she said, we're going to fix this. I don't know how long it takes, but we are going to fix this. That's not a question. I held her gaze from the door handle of Unit 44 and a storage facility in College Park at 10:15 on a Saturday night. And I believed her, not because I needed to, because Sarah Connor had never in 7 years told me something she did not mean. She locked the unit, walked back to her car, stopped with her hand on the door, turned and looked at me one more time. Get some sleep, she said, and try not to get shot by a wildlife photographer between now and Monday morning. Please. She got in the car. The headlights came on. She pulled out of the lot and drove south toward the city without looking back. I sat on the roof of Unit 44 for a while after she was gone. The Maryland night was cool. The stars were actually visible out here. I had forgotten how many stars you could see when you were 30 minutes outside of a major city and up above the light pollution. I had forgotten a lot of things about the world that you stop noticing when you spend 12 years inside office buildings. Funny what it takes to make you look up. Funny what it takes to make you actually see what's been above you the whole time. I flew back toward the city eventually. Back toward the park. Back toward the oak tree by the water that had become my base. Tomorrow Sarah would contact Doy. Tomorrow the copy would be in motion. Tomorrow the picture would start to change shape. I had been an eagle for 2 days now. I had no idea how to become human again or if that was even possible at this point. But I had one ally. I had a copy of the report in safe hands. I had Weston, Kolov, Webb, and room 307 inside my memory. And I had something else. Something I had not had on Friday night when I woke up on a rooftop with no arms and no explanation. I had a direction. I had a next step. I had the clear feeling that the thing I had uncovered 3 weeks ago, it mattered. It mattered enough that someone had gone to significant trouble to remove me from the board before I could finish what I started, which meant I had to finish it. From here, from this body, from 300 meters above the city with yellow eyes and no hands. Because that's the job. Doesn't matter what form you're in. The job is the job. You finish it or you don't. There is no middle. I settled onto my branch. The park was completely quiet. A fish jumped somewhere in the dark water below and made one small sound. I thought, 2 days ago I was complaining about the cafeteria sandwiches and watching for monitors and eating cold pizza alone. Now I was a 4-kilo bird with classified intelligence in my head and one ally with a copy of a report that could break everything. Honestly, I had worked cases that started from much worse positions than this one. Much worse. This was actually not so bad. The eagle closed its eyes. The CIA analyst inside it already knew exactly what tomorrow needed to look like before the sun came up. If you were Sarah, would you go to DOJ? Or would you find a different way around? Let me know what you would do down below. Sunday morning, day 3 in this body. I woke up on the branch, and this time I didn't forget even for 1 second. No 3 seconds of normal. No reaching for a phone that wasn't there. Just immediate, clean awareness of exactly what I was. That was either adaptation or acceptance. I wasn't sure which one it was. I wasn't sure it mattered at this point either. What mattered was that Sarah had the report. Sarah had a contact at DOJ, and today was Sunday, which meant people were home. People at home on Sunday mornings answer calls they wouldn't answer on a Tuesday. That was a real operational advantage. I stretched the wings out fully. Both of them. Felt the morning air move through the feathers. The body like this. I noticed that. I was starting to notice more things about the body. The way it processed information. The way it responded to the environment. An eagle in the morning is not the same as an eagle at noon. The senses were sharper before the city noise built up around them. At 6 a.m. over Washington, I could hear conversations from 40 meters below. I could read license plates from 200 meters up. I could feel pressure changes in the air that told me what the wind was going to do before it actually did it. That was new. That was not something I had as a human being. That was not something I had even noticed until day 3. It was remarkable. I thought about that as I flew my morning loop. The body was not a limitation. The body was a different kind of capability. The question was whether I was using it correctly. Whether I was thinking about this situation with the right frame of reference. For 2 days I had been thinking like a grounded analyst who happened to have wings. Maybe that was the wrong way to think. Maybe I needed to start thinking like what I actually was right now. An intelligence asset with access no other asset had ever had. No surveillance system in Washington covered what I covered. No camera angle matched what I saw from 300 meters daily. No human operative could move between locations the way I moved. No one tracked me. No one flagged me. I was invisible to the system. I had been treating the eagle as a problem to solve. Maybe the eagle was actually the most useful tool in this entire operation. That shift in thinking changed the morning loop immediately. I stopped doing a passive sweep and started doing active targeting. I went back to the dry cleaner on Weston Street, arrived at 6:40. The place didn't open until 8, but someone was inside. A light on in the back room, movement behind the frosted glass. Not an employee opening early. The movement was wrong for that. I landed on the roof of the building directly across the street and held position. The discipline was to wait. I waited. At 7:12, Weston's car turned onto the street. Parked half a block down. He sat in it for 4 minutes without getting out. Then he got out, walked to the dry cleaner, knocked twice on the glass. The back light went out. The front door opened from inside. He went in. The door closed. I was already moving. Dropped off the roof and came around to the alley behind the building. There was a small ventilation window near the roofline dot open. I landed on the narrow ledge below it and listened through the gap. 2 voices. Weston's I recognized immediately. The second was a man told her. Careful diction. The kind of careful that's practiced. They were speaking quietly, but not quietly enough for what I now had for hearing. Not at 6:40 on a Sunday in an empty alley. The older voice said, "The analyst situation has been handled. There is no active file. There is nothing pointing back to the program." Weston said, "The woman in his department pulled 3 personnel files on Friday afternoon. She's asking questions through back channels." A pause. Then the older voice said, "Which woman?" Weston gave a name. The name was Sarah Connor. My hands went cold. I had no hands. "She's careful," Weston said, "but she's moving. We need to know who she's talking to before she talks to the wrong person entirely." The older voice said, "Give me until this evening. I'll have eyes on her by noon." Another pause. "And the room on 4th Street? Still clean," Weston said. "Koloff moves Monday. The package goes with him. After Monday, there's nothing left in the city to find. Monday. The package moves Monday." That meant today was the last full day the envelope stayed in room 307 at Riverside Inn. After Monday, whatever was in that envelope would be out of the country, and out of reach of anything Sarah or DOJ could do. I held position on the ledge until I heard chairs move. Then I lifted off quietly and climbed fast and headed north toward the park. I needed to reach Sarah. Right now. Not at 9 p.m. Not through a careful channel. Right now before noon, when eyes went on her. This was the problem with having one communication method that required her to be stationary. and in a specific location outside. I could not call her. I could not text her. I could not walk up to her door and knock on it and tell her to check her phone. All I could do was go to her building and hope she came outside before noon, and I could get her attention before it was too late. I flew to her street in Northwest D.C., landed on the fire escape outside her apartment building, 4th floor. I knew the building. I had dropped her off twice after late nights at the office when her car was in for service. I knew which side her windows faced. I landed on the ledge outside the window I believed was her bedroom. Looked in. Couldn't see clearly through the curtain. Knocked. Not a human knock. A talon knocked out on glass. At 7:30 on a Sunday morning. This was going to go one of two ways. The curtain moved. Sarah's face appeared in the gap. She looked at me. Looked at the time on her phone. Looked back at me. She opened the window. "This better be serious," she said. Her voice was flat in the way it got when she was already alert. I tapped the window frame. Fast. Urgent. The pattern we use in the field when a timeline had compressed without warning. She recognized it. "How urgent?" I tapped twice. She disappeared from the window for 30 seconds. Came back with her notebook. I tapped on the glass. "SRH. THEYKNOW. She went very still. They know I'm asking questions. One tap. Yes. SURVILLNC. BYNON. She looked at her phone. It was 7:38. She had 4 hours and change. "Eyes on me by noon," she said quietly. "Which means I cannot make the DOJ call from here or from my regular phone at all." She was already thinking operationally. She had switched into the mode cleanly. That was why I had needed her and not anyone else. "The dry cleaner," she said. "That's where you heard it." One tap. Weston was there. One tap. Someone older. One tap. "And Monday," she said. Not a question. She had already connected the timeline to the envelope I had told her about on Saturday. "The package moves Monday," she said slowly. "Which means if we don't get the room documented before Monday, we have nothing physical." She was right. That was the core of it. The report described a network, but a network without physical evidence was just analysis. A classified report from a CIA analyst described a potential operation. An envelope in a hotel room was proof that it was real. "Okay," she said. She pulled the curtain partially closed behind her and lowered her voice even further toward the window ledge. "DOJ contact goes through a dead drop method. We set one up last night after I left you. It does not touch my phone or address. The location for the copy is already in her hands. She got it at 6 this morning before I went back to sleep." She confirmed. I felt something loosen in my chest at that. The copy was already moving. Sarah had not waited until morning. She had moved at 6. "The room," she said. 307. "We need documentation of what's inside it before Monday," which is a problem because neither of us can just walk in. She looked at me for a moment. I looked back at her, and I watched her work through the logic in real time behind her eyes. "You can get in," she said, "if the window is open. You got detail on the envelope from a different angle yesterday. You can do this." She was right. If I could get into the room, I could see exactly what was in it. Documented the only way I was able to document anything. Memory. Detail. Every marking on the envelope, every object in the room, every piece of information visible to 8 centimeters of focused eagle vision. "I need everything you can get," she said today. "Before they move it, every marking, every seal, every visible detail on that package." She pulled the curtain back further, looked up and down the street below. Nobody visible yet. The Sunday quiet was still holding. "I'm going to move in the next 40 minutes, she said. "Different location. Burner only from here. I will not come back here today. At 3 p.m. I'll be at the bench on the east side of the mall near the Hirschhorn. I'll have paper. You bring me what you found." She looked at me one more time. In the early morning light through the window, she looked less like a colleague and more like a partner. The kind of partner you end up with when the situation strips away everything institutional and leaves only what's actually real. "Be careful in that room," she said. "If someone is in there, you leave immediately. No hesitation. Nothing in there is worth the exposure." Then she closed the window. I heard movement inside the apartment. Fast, efficient movement. Sarah was already in motion. I turned and flew south toward 4th Street, toward Riverside Inn, toward room 307, and whatever was inside it before Monday came. The city was starting to wake up. Sunday morning traffic, dog walkers, joggers along the mall, the normal world doing normal things. I came in over the inn from the north side where the roofline gave me cover. From the street-level cameras I had mapped on Friday. The 3rd floor, east side, room 307. I came around the corner of the building at window height and checked the gap in the frame. The window was open. 3 inches. Enough. The body knew immediately that 3 inches was enough. I felt the assessment happen. I landed on the outer sill. Listened. The room was quiet. I pushed the window up slowly with one wingtip. It moved without sound. I was inside and for seconds. Landed on the back of the desk chair near the window, held completely still, and listened hard. The room was empty. Bed made to glasses on the small table by the window. A jacket hung over the back of the bathroom door. And on the desk, a flat leather portfolio. Black. Closed, with a combination lock on the clasp that was not currently engaged. I moved to the desk, looked at the portfolio without touching it. The lock was a 3-digit combination. The clasp was closed but loose. Someone had been in this and had not relocked it. Either careless or confident. In my experience, confident and careless look the same. I used one talon to lift the edge of the portfolio cover. Slowly. The clasp came open with almost no resistance at all. Inside, a sealed envelope. The yellow one I had seen pass hands in the park on Saturday morning. Still sealed. Still intact. Below the envelope, 3 printed pages. Dense text, small font. I leaned in and read as fast as I had ever read anything in my life. The pages were in English. A transfer agreement. Specific language about access rights to a signals intelligence collection program. Program name, Cardinal. Collection window, 18 months. Terms of delivery structured across for separate exchanges over time. The first exchange had already happened. The date on the first line of the agreement was 9 days ago. 9 days ago was already done. The envelope was the second exchange, due for transfer on Monday, at a location listed only as a 4-digit code, 4417. Nothing more. I read every line of all 3 pages. Every number, every date, every term, every piece of identifying language in the document. Then I read them again, then a third time. The body was still. The mind was moving at a speed that the body was perfectly suited for Cardinal. I had never seen that program name in any file I had accessed at the agency. Not in 12 years of level 3 clearance, which meant it was above my clearance level, which meant whatever was being sold was not something I had even been authorized to know existed, which meant my report, the one I had built from anomalous access patterns and flagged financial movements, had only caught the surface. I had found the footprints. The pages on this desk were what was making the footprints, and it was significantly larger than my report had described. I closed the portfolio cover carefully, backed away from the desk, moved to the window, checked the sill. Listened. Still clear. Out through the 3-inch gap, back onto the exterior wall, up to the roof lining for seconds. Then altitude, then open sky. I flew hard toward them all, toward the bench on the east side near the Hirschhorn, toward Sarah and a piece of paper and a pen. I had information that needed to be in writing in her hands before anything else moved. Before noon, before eyes went on her, the mall was busier than the streets had been. Families. Tourists. Sunday morning foot traffic across the open green space. I dropped to a lower altitude and came in from the east side where the tree line gave me some cover from casual observation. The bench was empty when I arrived. I landed on the armrest. Waited. Watched the surrounding area from force of habit. At 258, Sarah came from the direction of Independence Avenue. She was wearing different clothes than this morning. Different bag, different jacket. She had changed everything. She had done exactly what you do when you think you might be watched. She sat at the bench without looking at me directly first. Checked her phone, looked at the surrounding area casually. Then at me. She placed a folded piece of paper and a pen on the bench slats between us without saying anything. I moved to the paper immediately. I wrote fast. Faster than the napkins at Miller's because the surface was flat and the pen was good and I had practiced now. Cardinal, Sergeant Collection Program. She stopped breathing for a second when she read it over my wing as I wrote. I kept going. 18 months. For exchanges. First done 9 days ago. Envelope is exchanged Monday. Code 4417. She read each word as it appeared. 3 printed pages. Transfer agreement English. Both parties named. I stopped. Looked up at her. She was staring at the paper. She picked up the paper. Read everything I had written one more time from the top. Her face was doing the hard briefing thing again. Cardinal, she said, very quietly. Jack, Cardinal is not a program I have ever seen referenced in anything at my clearance level. Which means this is not a deputy director going rogue for personal gain. This is a structured program being systematically compromised. She looked at them all around us. At the families and the tourists and the Sunday morning normal world doing its normal things. The DOJ contact is not enough, she said. This is too large for a single outside contact to absorb and act on without institutional backing. We need a second lane, something that can move fast enough to stop Monday without tipping anything that's already in motion inside. I looked at the paper. She placed it back on the bench. I wrote, "Who do you trust completely?" She read it, sat with it. "There's a senator," she said. Senate Intelligence Committee. He's been pushing for an audit of collection programs for 2 years. The agency has been resisting that audit, which I always thought was political. I'm now rethinking what the resistance was actually about. She looked at me. His name is Senator David Marsh, Maryland. He has independent staff investigators who are not connected to the agency. If I reach his office today through the right channel, not through official contacts, through a personal connection I have to his chief of staff, we could potentially have a federal investigator with proper authority looking at room 307 before Monday morning even starts. She stopped, looked around the mall again, then back at me. This is moving faster than I expected it to move when I woke up today. I wrote on the paper, Weston knows you are asking questions. Her jaw tightened. She had known this since 7:30. It still landed. I know, she said, which means I need both lanes moving by tonight. Doy in the senator's office. Both tonight. No waiting on this. She stood up from the bench, folded the paper I had written on and put it in her jacket pocket alongside the pen. Professional motion. 3 p.m. tomorrow, she said. If I'm not compromised and everything is still in motion, same bench. I'll have an update for you. She paused, looked at me directly for a moment in the Sunday afternoon light over the National Mall with tourists 20 meters away. You got into that room, she said. You read those pages. You got out. You got here. She said it like she was confirming something real. You're the only intelligence asset in the history of this agency who has ever run a solo penetration of an active operations site as a bird. I thought about that for a moment, sitting on a bench on the National Mall on a Sunday afternoon as a 4-kilo bald eagle. She was right, in a very specific and deeply unusual way. She was completely right about that. It was not nothing. It was actually something. I'm going to put that in the file when this is over, she said. Officially. Under your name. I don't care how the conversation goes. Then she walked away across the mall toward Constitution Avenue. Same pace as always, like she had somewhere slightly urgent to be. I stayed on the bench for a few minutes after she was gone. A small child about 6 years old stopped 3 meters away and stared. He stared at me with the absolute fearless intensity that only children and very experienced field agents are capable of sustaining. Dad, he said without looking away from me. Dad, the eagle is sitting on the bench like a person. The father took a photo. I looked directly at the camera. I figured at this point I had earned the right to look directly at the camera. The boy waved at me. I held very still. He seemed to find this satisfying. He waved again and then ran back to his family. I lifted off the bench, climbed to altitude, banked south and then west, and then north in a wide arc over the city below me. Below me, Washington, D.C. was doing what it did on Sunday afternoons. Moving, breathing, running its 1,000 parallel lives at once. Somewhere in that city, Carl Weston was telling someone to put eyes on Sarah Connor before noon. Those eyes were probably already out. Somewhere in room 307, a leather portfolio with a 3-digit combination lock sat on a desk with 3 very specific pages inside it. Somewhere in a location coded as 4417. Whatever was meant to receive the second exchange was already waiting for Monday to arrive. And somewhere in this city, Sarah Connor was moving between the phone calls. That could change what Monday meant for all of those things. I flew the perimeter of the city from above. Not because I had somewhere to be, because moving helped me think and I needed to think. The scope of what I had read in that room was still settling into the picture I had been building since Friday night on the rooftop. CARDINAL, a signals intelligence collection program being systematically transferred through for structured exchanges over 18 months. Not a single rogue actor making one bad decision under pressure. A structured compromise with named parties and documented terms. The kind of thing that required access, patience, infrastructure, and confidence that no internal process would ever catch it at all. The kind of confidence you have when you have already made sure the internal process is not going to catch it. By design. I thought about the director and his too calm expression across the desk 3 weeks ago. Put it away, Jack. Trust the process. The process. Right. The process that was being run by someone who had already made sure the process would not find what I had found. One had been an analyst for 12 years. I understood the difference between institutional failure and institutional design. This was design, which meant Sarah was right. This was not a DOJ referral situation. This was not a clean lane through existing oversight structure. This required people with authority who were genuinely outside the system that had been compromised. People who had not been managed. Senator Marsh had been pushing for the audit for 2 years. The agency had been resisting. Now I understood what the resistance was protecting. If Marsh's people got into that audit, if they got the right documents in the right sequence, this would not stay internal. It could not. That was the play. That was what Sarah was building toward tonight with 2 phone calls from 2 burner phones into different locations. The sun was dropping toward the western side of the city. The light going golden over the monuments from up here was something else. I had been an eagle for 3 days. I had learned that cold water was better than warm for fishing. That thermals peaked at midday. That the city looked completely different from above than it did from inside it. That most surveillance had enormous blind spots overhead. That an analyst with wings and no hands and a very determined colleague was not as limited as the situation appeared at first. Tomorrow Sarah would tell me what the 2 calls had produced. Tomorrow we would know whether Monday could be stopped or redirected. Tonight I was going to do one more thing before I went back to the park. One more piece of information that I needed to gather. I flew toward McLean, toward Weston's house. Not to watch Weston, to watch who was watching Weston's house from the outside. Because if someone had built this operation carefully enough to run it for 18 months without internal detection, then Weston was managed. And managed assets have handlers. And handlers sometimes check on their assets when the timeline is getting tight and Monday is close. I arrived over Weston Street at 6:40 p.m. Made one slow pass. Then I saw what I was looking for. A parked car, 2 streets over occupied, engine off, 1 person, sitting very still, in a position that gave a clear sight line to Weston's front door and driveway. Not a neighbor, not someone waiting to pick someone up. The stillness was too professional. The position was too specifically chosen. I circled wide and came in low from the east side where the tree canopy gave me cover. Landed in the oak tree across from the car. The person in the car was the man from room 307. Gray-haired, not large. The one I had seen at the window the day before. Looking out, he was watching Weston's house with the patient attention of a person who had done this many times before in many different cities. He was not a CIA officer. I was certain of that. I had seen enough CIA officers in enough operational postures to know the difference. The way he held himself, the way he used the seat of the car, the way his eyes moved across the street in a specific repeating pattern. This was someone with a different kind of training, a different institutional background, from a different country's system entirely. I had my answer about who Weston's handler was. I had the face, I had the car, I had the plate. I read it from 30 meters up. I held the plate in memory with the same discipline I had used in the room on the desk with the 3 pages and the program name. Then I lifted out of the oak tree and flew east, back toward the city, back toward the park, back toward the branch by the water. I had 4 pieces of information that Sarah did not have yet. The plate, the face, the car, and the confirmation of a foreign handler. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. on the bench near the Hirschhorn I would give her all 4, and the picture would be complete enough to move on. The eagle flew through the Sunday evening sky over Washington. The city below was beautiful in the long golden light of late afternoon. 3 days ago, I was an analyst with cold pizza and for monitors and a report that someone powerful had asked me to forget about. Now I was the only asset with a view of the entire operation that the operation itself could not see, track, map, or account for. There are worse positions to be in, honestly. There are significantly worse positions than this one. I had seen most of them. The branch, the park, the water below, the stars starting to come out over Maryland. Another day ending, Monday getting closer. I thought, if they had wanted to stop me, they should have turned me into something that couldn't fly. That was their first mistake. The eagle settled onto the branch, locked the talons, closed the eyes. The analyst was already running tomorrow's scenarios in his sleep. If you were the handler in that car watching Weston's house, what would your next move be before Monday? Tell me in the comments. Monday. I was awake before the city, before the traffic, before the first government car turned onto Constitution Avenue below. Day 4 in this body. And for the first time since Friday night, I woke up without the weight of not knowing what came next. I knew exactly what came next. Today was the day everything either moved or didn't. There was no middle version of Monday. The envelope in room 307 was scheduled to transfer today. Code 4417. A location I still didn't have. A timeline I couldn't see. But Sarah had made 2 calls last night. And 2 calls made by the right person to the right people could stop a lot of things. I flew the morning loop fast. Tighter than usual. Closer to the ground. I needed current information before 3 p.m. on the bench. First pass, Riverside Inn. Room 307 window. Closed, curtains drawn. Activity light visible through the gap at the curtain edge. Someone was in the room. Moving early. The body language of a person who was preparing something rather than just waking up. Second pass, Weston's house in McLean. His car was already gone. Before 7 a.m. on a Monday. That was not his normal pattern. The surveillance car from the night before was gone too. The handler was not there, which meant the handler was somewhere else already. Third pass. The dry cleaner. Closed. Dark. No sign of activity. Whatever the location was being used for had already served its purpose. The operation was moving. Everything was accelerating toward a point that was somewhere in this city before the end of business today. I climbed to altitude and thought. The analyst's brain running the calculation it always ran when pieces started moving at once. If the transfer was happening today, if code 4417 was a meeting location, then Kolov would need to move the envelope this morning. Hotel checkouts in Washington on Monday mornings happened between 10 and 11. That gave me a 3-hour window before movement. I needed to be on that hotel when Kolov left. I needed to follow him to 4417 and have the location in Sarah's hands before noon. Because if Senator Marsh's people were going to intercept anything today, they needed an address, a time, a physical location. I flew back to Riverside and took position on the roof line of the building across the street. And I waited. That was the job. Waiting without moving is something eagles are genuinely built for. The body settled into it immediately with zero complaint. I, on the other hand, had spent 12 years in a career where waiting meant checking for monitors and refreshing 3 data feeds. Doing it on a rooftop in the cold morning air with nothing but my own thoughts was a different kind of discipline entirely. But I held it because I understood that this was the moment the whole thing turned on. This window right here, this exact morning. At 9:47, the front door of Riverside and open. Andrei Kolov walked out. Dark coat, no luggage, the portfolio under his arm. The leather portfolio with a 3-digit combination lock. The one I had opened in room 307 yesterday morning. He had it. Moving now. He turned left on 4th Street. Walking. Not a cab. Not a car service. Walking. Which meant 4417 was not far from the hotel. I lifted off the roofline and followed at altitude. 30 meters. Enough height to track without being tracked in return. He walked for blocks north, then turned east, then crossed a small parking structure and came out on the other side on East Street. Then he went into a building, a medium-sized office building, glass front, lobby visible from outside, security desk just inside. I came down to street level and landed on the decorative stonework above the main entrance. Read the building directory through the glass. Suite 412, 4th floor. A consulting firm name I did not recognize. Holding company language, the kind of name that meant nothing specific. For 417. Suite 412, for 417. The 4 was the floor. The 417 was the suite number read differently. That was it. I had the location. I had the building. I had the address. I had the time. 9:54 a.m. on a Monday morning in Washington. I needed Sarah. Right now. Not at 3 p.m. Right now, while Kolov was still in the building and the envelope was still in his hands. I turned and flew hard toward the mall. Toward the bench. Toward the place we had agreed on. She had said 3 p.m., but this was now. She was not at the bench. Of course she was not at the bench. It was 9:57 in the morning on a Monday. She was somewhere else. I flew to her building in Northwest. The apartment window. Landed on the ledge. Curtains open. Nobody inside. She had already left. I flew to Langley, the sandwich shop. Too early. Didn't open until 11. The street around it was quiet and mostly empty. I was carrying the most time-sensitive piece of information in this entire operation, and I had no way to deliver it to the one person who could use it. This was the limitation that no amount of eagle capability could solve. Information without a receiver was just noise in an empty room. I landed on a bench on the mall and thought hard. She had two active channels running, Doi and Senator Marsh's office, both moving. If those channels were already in motion, then someone on the other end of those channels was already making decisions this morning. Sarah would have given them what she had. But what she had as of last night did not include the building address, did not include Suite 412. Without 412, they had a program name. They had a transfer agreement. They had dates and terms, but they had no physical intercept point. A physical intercept required a location, required a time, required the kind of specificity that turned a referral into an actual operation. I had the specificity. I had it in my head. I had the building, the floor, the suite, the time, and the man walking through the lobby. I thought about what Sarah had said at the window Sunday morning. Move. 2 phones, 2 channels. Tonight. No waiting on any of this. She was moving. She had been moving since 6 a.m. Saturday. She did not stop moving. That was the single most reliable fact I knew about her, which meant the people she had reached were also moving. Which meant someone this morning was looking for exactly what I was carrying. I needed to find the channel, not Sarah directly. The channel. Whoever was on the other end of the call she had made last night. Senator Marsh. His office was in the Hart Senate Office building on Constitution Avenue. His staff investigators worked out of that office. If Sarah had reached his chief of staff last night through a personal connection, if the contact had gone the way Sarah expected, then there was a staff investigator in the building this morning who was waiting for something specific to happen and didn't know where to look. I flew to the Hart building, landed on the exterior stonework above the main entrance, watched the people moving in and out. I could not walk in. I could not ask for the right office. I could not go to the security desk and explain what I needed, but I could watch. And a trained analyst watching the entrance of a government building knows what urgency looks like when it walks out. At 10:23, a woman came out of the Hart building moving with a kind of pace. That meant something had just changed indoors. Mid-30s, professional clothes, phone to her ear, walking fast and looking at the street for something. Not a cab. Scanning. She ended the call, looked at her phone, then looked up at the building across the street, then back at her phone, searching for an address. I made a decision. It was not a careful decision. It was a fast decision made on incomplete information under time pressure. My specialty. I dropped off the stonework and landed on the sidewalk directly in front of her, 1 meter from her feet, and I looked up at her. She stopped, looked down at me, then around at the people passing on the sidewalk, then back down at me. Okay, she said slowly. I walked toward her, 2 steps, then I stopped, looked up, then I turned and looked east along Constitution Avenue, then back at her. She stared at me. I did it again, looked up at her, turned east, looked back. The third time I held the east position longer. Are you? She said, and stopped, looked around again, then back at me with an expression that was trying to find its category. She said, Sarah Connor said there was an asset providing real-time intelligence. She said it very quietly and very carefully. I held eye contact. Then I turned east one more time and started walking. 2 steps. Stop. Looked back at her over my wing. She followed. I don't know what she told herself in that moment to make following an eagle down Constitution Avenue make sense. But she followed, and that was what mattered. That was the only thing that mattered in this particular moment on this street. I walked her east 3 blocks. Then I stopped at a low concrete planter in front of an office building and looked up at it pointedly. She understood. She took a notepad out of her jacket pocket and a pen and set it on the planter's surface and stepped back. I got on the planter, picked up the pen, wrote the building name, the address, Suite for 1 to .kolov, portfolio, arrived 0954. She read it as I wrote. I felt the change in her breathing from a meter away when she reached the suite number. Sharp and take. Short. She photographed the notepad with her phone before I had finished the last word. Then she was already dialing before the pen was down. She walked away fast talking into the phone. I heard 3 words before she was too far for even eagle hearing to catch clearly. We have it. 3 words. That was all. We have it. The channel was live. The address was moving. The clock was running now. I flew back to the office building on East Street, took position on the roof line across the street and watched the entrance. And waited. This was a different kind of waiting than the hotel roof. This was the waiting you do when the pieces are in motion and your part is done. The part where you sit above the board and watch what you set in motion actually move. The analyst version of a completed report. At 11:15, to unmarked vehicles parked on East Street. For people got out in civilian clothes, to took positions at the entrance, to went inside. The movements were clean and practiced and completely invisible to anyone who wasn't specifically looking for them. Marsh's people, Senate Intelligence Committee investigators with federal authority and enough standing to walk into the lobby with purpose. At 11:31, Andrei Kolov walked out of the building with 2 of those investigators on either side of him. No portfolio. He got into the back of one of the unmarked vehicles without visible resistance. The door closed. The vehicle pulled into traffic. The second vehicle stayed. 2 more investigators went back inside the building. Suite for 112 was being processed before noon on Monday. I sat on the rooftop across the street and watched all of it from above. From the angle that nobody ever thought to look up at. The angle that had been invisible to this entire operation for days. The angle that had made all of this possible from the start. I thought about the director and his calm expression. Put it away, Jack. I thought about Weston's voice and the dry cleaner at 6 a.m. I thought about the 3 pages in the portfolio CARDINAL. 18 months for exchanges. The first one already done 9 days ago. The second one was sitting in an unmarked federal vehicle heading toward a secure location. The third and fourth would never happen now. And I thought about Friday night, about cold pizza and thermometers and a report that someone powerful had asked me to forget about closing my eyes for 1 second in my office chair and opening them on a rooftop with no arms and no explanation and no plan. I had turned that into this. For days, no hands, one colleague with 2 phones and the right connections and 0 hesitation, and about 4 kilos of bird that turned out to be a more effective intelligence asset than anyone in this city would ever officially admit. At 12:40, my phone rang. I did not have a phone, but Sarah's burner did. She was at the bench near the Hirschhorn. I flew there. She was already sitting when I arrived. She did not look like someone who had just helped dismantle an 18-month intelligence compromise. She looked like someone eating a sandwich on a bench on the National Mall on a Monday afternoon. The practice normal was very good. I landed on the bench armrest. She looked at me, then at the mall around us. Then she said one thing without any preamble at all. Kolov is in federal custody. The portfolio is in evidence. The DOJ referral is formally open as of 40 minutes ago. It's moving. She took a bite of her sandwich, chewed, looked at the monument in the middle distance with a completely neutral expression. Weston was brought in for questioning at 11. He is cooperating, which means the handler you found in McLean is already burning too. She looked at me. The plate you gave me through the notepad with the investigator. I ran it through a back channel late last night. Diplomatic plates. He came in 3 weeks ago. The timing matches the acceleration and Weston's access pattern from my internal data. She took another bite, chewed, looked at the tourists walking past the bench in the Monday afternoon light, completely composed. Cardinal is being locked down as of this morning by people who have the authority to lock it down and the independence to use it. The audit Senator Marsh has been pushing for 2 years. It's been formally opened today, this morning, with the portfolio as the predicate. She was quiet for a moment, just sitting on the bench with her sandwich and the autumn light on the mall. And everything moving now. You know what the funny part is, she said. Not a question, more like a thought arriving out loud. The director called me this morning, asked if I knew anything about an active investigation touching the agency. Calm voice, measured, exactly the way you described him to me. I said no. I said I had been working my regular caseload. I said I hadn't heard anything unusual. She paused. He believed me, or he wanted me to think he believed me, which is the same thing operationally when you're the one deciding what to do next. She finished the sandwich, folded the paper bag precisely, the way she always folded things, neat. No wasted motion. Very Sarah. There's something else, she said. She did not look at me when she said it. She looked at the monument in the middle distance, the division that handles non-standard personnel situations, asset transformation cases. I filed a request with them this morning. I went very still on the armrest. She still did not look at me. It's not a small request. They don't have a lot of precedent for it. But there are documented cases in the classified archive of reversible transformation incidents tied to specific experimental programs. She looked at me now directly, with the expression that meant she had checked the data twice and was confident in what it said. 3 of them reversed fully. All 3 were connected to the same discontinued research program from the late 90s. Same division. I found the program file this morning through the access the Marsh audit opened up. It was buried under 4 layers of compartmentalization. The division head is someone I went through training with. She owes me something from a situation in 2019 that I will not go into detail on. She is going to look at your case today. She said she needs until Wednesday to tell me whether the reversal protocol is applicable. She held eye contact with me steadily. The way she always delivered information she knew had significant weight on the other side of it. Wednesday, she said. 2 days. I will be at this bench at 3 p.m. on Wednesday and I will have an answer for you either way. I looked at her. At the mall behind her, at the city spreading out in every direction below the sky I have been living in for days. 4 days in this body. 4 days of flying and watching and memorizing and writing with a talent on napkins and notepads and windows. 4 days of seeing the city from above the way nobody in any intelligence capacity had ever actually seen it before. Not like this. 4 days of being the thing that nobody in the operation thought to account for. The angle nobody checked. The variable nobody mapped. I thought about what that meant, what it was worth, what it would mean to put it down and walk back into the building onto legs. And I thought about what I had seen from up here that I had never seen from inside. The size of the city, the shape of the patterns, the way the pieces connected when you could see them all at once from above rather than one at a time through a screen in a basement. I had been a better analyst in 4 days as an eagle than I had been in years sitting behind for monitors eating cold pizza alone. That was an uncomfortable thought. It was also a completely honest one, and I had always tried to be honest with uncomfortable thoughts. I looked at Sarah. She was watching me with the patient stillness she used when she was letting someone arrive at something on their own. I tapped the bench armrest once. She nodded. Wednesday, she said. 3 p.m. This bench. She stood and picked up the folded bag. In the meantime, she said, if you see anything from up there that I should know about before Wednesday, you know where I eat lunch. Then she walked away across the mall in the Monday afternoon light with her usual pace, like she had somewhere slightly urgent to be. I stayed on the bench for a while after she left. The city moved around me. The tourists and the joggers and the government workers, all of them living inside the city I had been living above for days. All of them moving through the ground level of everything. I thought about Wednesday, about the division head and the discontinued research program and the reversal protocol and whether it applied. 2 days. I had operated for in this body. Tomorrow was not the hard part. The hard part was already done. Monday was done. I spread the wings, felt the air under them, the body responding immediately with that ease that had taken exactly 1 morning to develop. 300 meters. The city below, the monuments, the river, the buildings where the things I had set in motion were still moving. I banked north, then east, then came around south over the Capitol and let the thermal off the mall carry me up without any effort. From up here, everything looked the way it had looked on Friday night when I first climbed above the panic and started to see clearly. Like a map, like a pattern, like something that could be understood if you got high enough above it to see the whole thing at once. I had always been an analyst. That had never changed. Not the body, not the 4 days, not the wings or the talons or the yellow eyes. The analyst was the part that stayed consistent through everything else changing around it. The part that found the pattern, named it, moved. That was the job. It had been the job for 12 years. It would be the job on Wednesday when Sarah had an answer for the division head. And if the answer was yes, if Wednesday meant walking back into a building onto legs with a badge and a level 3 clearance, I would walk back in. I would sit back down at the desk. I would open the file that someone powerful had asked me to put away, and I would finish the report. All of it, every section, every footnote, every connection that Cardinal and Weston and Kolov had confirmed. Because that was what you did when you had spent for days above the city, watching the shape of the thing from every possible angle. You came back down. You sat at the desk. You wrote it all out in a language that the people on the ground could actually use. That was the job. It had always been the job. The Eagle was just a different way of doing it. A different altitude. Same work. I flew one more wide circle over Washington, north to south, east to west, the whole city inside one long banking turn in the afternoon light. Then I headed toward the park. Toward the oak tree by the water, toward the branch that had been my base for 4 days now. 2 more nights, then Wednesday, then Sarah on the bench with an answer from the division head and the discontinued program file. And either way, whether Wednesday meant walking back in or staying in the sky a while longer, the work was done. Monday was done. The Eagle landed on the branch, locked the talons into the familiar bark, looked out at the water below moving through the park. The CIA analyst inside the Eagle thought about cold pizza and thermometers and a report that someone had asked him to forget about, and about how the decision to make 1 copy, on instinct, on reflex, on 12 years of understanding how important copies were, had changed everything. Not because the copy was the plan. There had been no plan. The plan had been made for days at a time. 1 copy, 1 branch, 1 colleague who walked fast and carried a pen and asked the right question when everyone else stayed quiet. 1 Eagle over Washington who turned out to be exactly the right shape for the job that needed to be done in those for specific days. The sun went down over the western edge of the city. The lights came on across the mall one by one in the deepening Monday evening. Washington kept moving below, the way it always moved, the way it would keep moving regardless of what any one person inside it did. That was the thing about this city. It was always larger than the things happening inside it, always wider than the current operation. That used to bother me when I was sitting behind the desk. The sense that nothing you did was ever quite large enough to matter fully. From up here it looked different. From up here you could see that the small things connected to the larger things in ways that were real. 1 analyst, 1 copy, 4 days, 1 program called Cardinal that was now in evidence in a federal case that would run for years. That connected. That was real. That was the shape of how things actually changed when you were willing to stay with them long enough. I thought, if they had wanted to stop me, they should have made me something they couldn't see. That was their actual mistake. They took away my hands. They forgot that what I had always used was my eyes, and they gave me better ones than I had ever had before. The Eagle sat on the branch in the quiet Monday evening park. Patient. Still, watching the water catch the last of the day's light, waiting for Wednesday, already building the outline of the finished report in the back of the analyst's mind behind the yellow eyes. Some cases close clean, some cases close slow. This one was going to close the way the important ones always did. All the way through. The water moved, the city breathed, the branch held, and somewhere across Washington, the things set in motion on Monday kept moving. That was enough. That had always been enough. The job done. The copy in safe hands. The eagle on the branch above the quiet part. That was enough for one analyst who woke up on a rooftop on Friday with no arms and somehow made it all the way to Monday anyway. Drop a comment below. Did you think Jack was going to make it out? And what do you think is waiting for him on Wednesday?